Hey everybody, welcome to the Brute Neighbors Podcast, the show where we talk about anything and everything, because why not? I'm Philip, and I am joined by...
Seth.
And today, we are talking about some super nifty topics. Like what, Seth?
Royals. Royalty.
We will never be those.
We will
We're
never
funny.
be royals.
You are a royal pain in my ass, though, Seth.
Aw, shucks.
Love you, buddy. And we're also talking about Batman, the super world famous superhero, with a fuck ton of movies, comics, shows, video games. He's a very wide property.
Giant media empire.
Oh, 100%. So we're going to be delving into as much of that as we have knowledge of, which is probably a very small fraction of what exists, but we're going to do our best.
Absolutely.
And then the
Don't
random
forget.
topic. Oh,
Yeah.
nope, don't forget something.
Don't forget Philip's
The thing I
random
said?
topic, which he's definitely prepared this week.
Hey, last week I had an idea for what I was going to give you. I may have forgotten it in that time, but I had one.
Will he remember it before the end of this episode?
Probably not.
Only you, the viewer, will find out if you make it that far.
If you make it to the end of the video, you'll find out if I remember. So let's just dive right into the concept of royalty. Seth, what do you think about royalty?
There's so much to say. I mean, just sort of this institution of this cast of people that is above everyone else. It's a very strange concept when you think about it.
Oh, and very, very problematic in the long run.
Yes. It's almost like, our entire national culture is, grounded in the rejection of it.
Yeah. And it's so strange to me that the rejection of royalty is a relatively new concept.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of time, we have had kings and emperors and royals who, these are the people who are in charge. Their kids are going to be the next ones in charge. Yeah. And the only way that ever changes is through weird politics and marriages and stuff. But, typically, it's just this one line of people rules forever outside of a revolution.
You have to think of, how the institution of royalty came about too. At the very beginning, it's just groups of people and tribes who elected whoever the greatest warrior or the greatest thinker of the group was, and they're like, you are our leader. And that would change either when that person dies and goes on to either their son or heir or whoever they designate as the next leader, or whoever comes in with the old leader's head on his stick.
Yeah.
That is probably how this sort of concept of, giving power to your children and keeping power within the family got started is, it's a much cleaner continuity if you say, oh, okay, my bloodline is special, so it has to stay within the family, and that way people are less likely to come in and put your head on a stick so that they can be leader.
Or we could, democratically elect people and avoid the head on stick part.
That's stupid, Philip. Who would ever do that?
I know, right? The whole thing about royalty and just looking at history, excuse me, just looking at history, royal lines always have a self-destruct somewhere along the way because usually because of mass amounts of inbreeding. Because that was very, very common. Because royals had to marry other royals, and when there's only 200 royals in all of a continent, there's not a lot of dating room.
It's like how every single major royal family in Europe has large amounts of hemophilia because they're all descended from Queen Victoria, who had it.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, like, look at all the fucking. There's always a crazy king every now and then, every few generations.
Well, my favorite is there was one king of Spain. Oh, I forget his. I think he was one of the Philips.
Yeah,
But he
I
was
think it's Philip
famous,
II, right?
probably just famous for how poor of health he had because of all the inbreeding, and he just lived in debilitating agony throughout his entire life. And I remember there's this one quote of he baffled Christendom just by his sheer survival.
There were a couple. I forget if it was the King of Spain or King of France, who I think also, had major health problems because of inbreeding, and like his mental state was really fucked, and he like
Well,
he made one of those giant like buildings just to say fuck it. If I gotta stay inside, I'm just gonna live in this fancy ass place.
yeah. Well, think of George the Third. I mean, George the Third is famous for so many reasons. We know him in the U.S. as the king who lost the United States from Great Britain.
Well, hopefully
And
someone finds it.
I hope so. We've been looking for a while.
Yeah.
But I mean, he is famous because after the Revolutionary War, he was king for another good 50 years or so, and by 1800, like, dysentery was completely eating away at his mind. He was well known to be crazy, and his son took over power from him long before he died. They were just like, oh yeah, don't worry, Dad, you're still the king. Don't listen to a single word he says.
Yeah. Like, how did it take thousands of years for people to finally say, oh, we don't need a king? Because even like when America happened, like, they were like, okay, Washington, your turn to be king.
Well, we were not the earliest democracy by
Yeah,
any
there's
means.
been a few
There have
others,
been
yeah, for
tons
sure.
of democracies before this. The problem is, I mean, it's just so much easier to have a monarchy. It's so, I mean, it really
Whoa,
is so much.
that's some radical talk there, my friend.
No, it's so much simpler to just be like, all power is vested in him. Everybody just do what he says, unless somebody else kills him and takes control of the keys of power around him, like the military and like the medical professionals and so on and so forth. And I mean, it's a democracy takes a lot of work, and if that work is not put in, then that society starts to crumble. You see strongmen emerge who try and consolidate power underneath themselves, and then you end up essentially back at monarchy. I mean,
Yeah.
look at Bonaparte, Napoleon's France, Nazi Germany. We see this, or I mean, even the Roman Empire, for Pete's sake. It was a republic that Julius Caesar came in and was like, it's my empire now.
Yeah.
And
And then he got stabbed.
Yes. If the keys of power are not taken care of, if the mechanisms of democracy are not upheld, then you will see yourself going back to the same sort of state over and over again. And once that has had time to fester for a few hundred years, then you have this concept of royalty, of they've been in power so long, they must be ordained by God as some, like, superior person or superior family.
Yeah. That is something I definitely worry about with the corruption that is very common in our country, of like...
Oh, you're noticing some parallels to my big speech I just gave?
A little bit. I definitely worry of like when... I don't think it's going to be with any current people, but we've had this talk before. I think that I'm worried that someone else is going to come in and just be like, all right, I'm in charge now. And like things will just have been so corrupted from past things that people are like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Let's give it a go." That's new, right? It's like it's not new. We've seen it happen infinite amount of times throughout history, but that's something that definitely scares me, is that we're just on our way to another tyrannical ruler.
Certainly.
But it's fun stuff.
Well, and it's kind of interesting being in the United States, where we're so rooted in this idea of democracy, where, I mean, we do essentially have proto-royal families who have existed since, I mean, with any sort of consolidation of economic power, the Rockefellers,
Yeah.
the DuPonts,
The Kennedys?
the Trumps nowadays, and the Kennedys still. These
Yeah.
people who have amassed so much either wealth or power or both underneath themselves that they are the beginnings of, people think of them differently just because they belong to a certain family. It's
Yeah.
the same concept.
Yeah, the
I
only
mean-
difference is they don't have as much direct, at least visibly direct, power
Yes.
over everyone. But they still do, because they
Right.
especially Bezos is his line is now basically going to be, he already has such a huge grasp on the country because we're so reliant on Amazon.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know his family situation, but I can very much see his family on going to be a force in America in future generations.
Well, and you see similar parallels with the inbreeding. The DuPonts were famous for intermarrying. That, like, there are so many. The DuPonts are huge in the area where I grew up. They used to own Delaware at the turn of the century, and there are so many urban legends of, oh, there's such big walls around the mansions because they didn't want anybody looking in and seeing how deformed their children were.
Oh wow! Yeah, I don't know much about the DuPonts, but
Same as the Rockefellers, just one of those big, boom turn of the century families.
yeah, it's still interesting that even though America is so built around, democracy and like rejection of royalty, our media still has a habit of romanticizing royalty.
Absolutely.
Like, look at all the, like, well, not every, but the majority of Disney movies. Like, the protagonist or one of them is a princess or a prince. And hell, the whole point of Aladdin is him, like, he hasn't made it till he becomes royalty. Till he cons his way into royalty, but...
Well, and this is a major criticism of Star Wars, but the Skywalkers are essentially a royal line. They are the most important family in the galaxy, and they are the ones that are either the ones to save or destroy everyone.
And that's a major criticism I have with the films of Star Wars, but Star Wars episode coming soon, sometime in November.
Oh, no.
Get ready for that bloodbath. We're going to hype it up. We're going to somehow, for the first time ever, be civil talking about Star Wars. Somehow, magically.
Well, and since World War II, and I perhaps a little bit before then, with all of the Anglophilia, all of the pro-Britain sentiment that we've had this renewal of obsession with real-life royalty, with with the British royal family. We are obsessed with them. Queen Elizabeth
so
is plastered
weird to me.
all over our tabloids, even though she has nothing to do with us.
Yeah, that's... We had an entire war, really two, in a way, the War of 1812 as well. We had multiple wars being like, hey, Britain, no, we're on our own, peace out. And now we're, like, obsessed with Britain again. It's like...
Yeah. And, there's a good amount of the populace who... I'm sure a good portion of it is just sort of jokingly, but there is a good portion of the populace where, they probably wouldn't see having the Queen of England or being part of England as, like, a bad thing. Because there is this admiration and obsession with these oh, these institutions are just so old. They're special. They're ordained by God.
God, I mean, I know it's just who I am as a person, but I hate when people are just like, oh, this thing's been around forever. That must automatically make it good. It's like, no, that's not how that works. Traditionalism just for the sake of traditionalism, I can't get on board for.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, not that, like, there's anything wrong with, like, certain traditions. Like, if that's what makes you happy, that's what makes you happy. But a lot of things that are like, why do we do this? Oh, we've just always done it that way. That mindset is very problematic to me. And yeah, I can't get on board for that. And I think that's a big part of like why I inherently don't like the concept of royalty. I mean, it's the ultimate form of nepotism. It's where nepotism stems from. It's the entire idea that your power and money and everything, it's just automatically passed on to your kids, even if they didn't do jack shit for it. Yeah. And it's like, I don't agree with that. Like, I mean, I don't know. I don't like the idea of like, I just don't like that idea of like, oh, I worked for all these things. That's great. I'm just going to give it all to my kids because why the fuck not? It's like, they didn't do shit for it. Like, I don't know. If I somehow become a multimillionaire, like, I probably would end up giving like my kids some stuff, but like probably 70% I would want to give to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And like, I mean, anytime that happens, like, it's always a big, like, because that has happened occasionally. But like, anytime that happens, like, the kids are understandably upset, but it's like this big scandalous thing of like, oh my God, he gave that money to charity instead of his kids? What's wrong with him? It's like, that should be the norm, but, you know.
Well, and you have people like Bill Gates. Bill Gates has kids, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he does.
And I am sure that, like, in 50 years or so, we're going to hear about Bill Gates III either running for Congress or just inventing something new just because we are obsessed with that sort of continuity of family lines. But that is one example of Bill Gates has been very deliberate in the overwhelming majority of my money and resources is going to be given to the betterment of the world and not to building up my own self-image and my own family line. Because, yeah. I mean, otherwise, Bill Gates could absolutely
he could take over the world.
Of a new royal family.
Well, I mean, straight up, he could rule the world if he wanted to.
Yeah. I mean, I have... That's what worries me so much about Jeff Bezos is Jeff Bezos is richer than Bill Gates and does not have any qualms with hoarding all that money to himself and all that power to himself.
That's the interesting thing about Bill Gates is like I have kind of issues with billionaires in general, but like he is definitely probably by far the closest thing to like a good billionaire. Like he is the most ethical.
A good amount of his wealth was developed through unethical means, and I mean obviously that there is going to be problematic parts of any sort of situation in which a person becomes as privileged as Bill Gates is. But Bill Gates, it does at least have an altruistic mindset about it of, even though there are so many problematic elements around him, he actively wants to fight against these things, which, I mean, is very rare in the world we see today.
For sure. And like he does spend like a lot of, like, he's very passionate about health stuff and health research. Like, I know he was a big supporter of like helping develop a corona vaccine.
Yeah, and I mean, like, he was huge in the fight against Ebola a few years ago.
Yeah, like that's like a passion of his is fighting against pandemics and epidemics. Like he was one of the people who warned a decade ago that we were set for a global pandemic if we didn't get our shit together. Guess what? We didn't get our shit together.
What? That's not topical. What do you mean? The world is normal. I can.
The world is
go
fine, right?
Outside.
I can go outside and not have to wrap my face up like a mummy or a train robber.
My president says I don't have to.
You're... oh, lordy. Seth, we're already towing the line on political rants today. Let's not go overboard, my friend.
Yeah, okay, that's best not to get into.
Let's not dive into that one. I don't want to make our poor editor have to sift through that. Which I don't know. I don't remember if we announced it last week or not. But we have a new editor. Yippee-ki-yay.
He's awesome. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, my friend. Shout out to you.
I will say, I mean, as much as I am like, I am strongly against the concept of a monarchy, and I never want to live under a monarchy. But I was thinking recently, particularly with all the turmoil that's gone on in the United States and all the uncertainty in our country's future, particularly in the government. I've thought a lot about Britain's system with their constitutional monarchy, and there's sort of this belief that persists that the monarchy now is just a figurehead. They have no real power, and it's just to raise Tories money, which to a large extent it is, but there is still real power vested in the Queen. The Queen has the power to operate the levers and mechanisms of power, even though she cannot execute that power herself. And I think that is a very interesting concept of having one person and one uniform line through which all power is vested to maintain a continuity no matter what happens, but even though they are so powerful, have absolutely no ability to use that power themselves.
I mean, that's theoretically kind of, to a degree, what we have at the presidency. Like, it's a little less streamlined, but, like,
yes,
the idea that we have this person is basically the head of our nation, and, like, they can do executive orders, and they have, like, veto power, and they have a lot of the final say on things. But, you know, it's supposed to be, they can't fully do anything completely nutso without the other two branches of government. And like, we do have that continuity of, like, you and me both are very passionate about, like, knowing all the different presidents, and, like, you can name all of them, I can probably name all of them.
Well, and I guess that's kind of what we have or what the Supreme Court has kind of become. And the Supreme Court is receiving all sorts of renewed scrutiny and, like, people thinking more critically of the role of the Supreme Court. But at the end of the day, what we accept as law, even though the law is often extremely unclear, what we accept as both the law and what our mechanisms of power in this country are capable of doing are all derived from what the Supreme Court says.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to think about it.
It is interesting that, like, the Supreme Court, because, like, it's lifelong. It's a lifelong appointment. Yeah, and, like, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing fully, but, like, if we're going to do that, we need congressional term limits.
Oh, absolutely.
There should only be one
term limits for a while.
Oh, yes, 100%. We should not have more than one branch that has... Because essentially, like, there are congressmen who have been there for 30, 40, 50 years.
Longer. I mean, Joe Biden was my senator from 1972 until 2008.
Yeah.
That is insane.
That shouldn't happen. And like, regardless of whether you like the senator or not, that
Yeah.
is ridiculous. There should be term limits, like there are
Well,
now.
I mean, there were still senators in Congress that voted on the Civil Rights Act who were still in Senate when Obama became president.
Yeah.
And that if you are in office for that long, there is a problem.
Yeah, because the thing is, we need fresh blood. We need new ideas, and it's some bafflingly low number of like how many senators are below the age of 40.
Yeah.
Hell, even below the age of 50, it's incredibly low.
Yeah.
Like, off the top of my head, I can only think of AOC. I'm sure there's a couple others, but
there's a good amount, but it is a very low number
low percentage
in proportion to the total.
Yeah, and like, that's not good.
Yeah.
We need to have a constant influx of new ideas to keep us fresh, and it's a problem. That's like, we can't have this, and I think a part of it is we are still stuck around this idea of royalty and continuity of like, oh, this person, like we said earlier, this person's been here for 20 years. They clearly know what they're doing. They maybe knew what they were doing 20 years ago, but that's not necessarily reflective of what needs to be done today.
Yeah. Something I read recently that I thought was very interesting was so Mexico has a general election every 6 years. And every 6 years, the president is term limited to 1 term. And up until this last few years, senators could only serve for 1 term. And so every 6 years, all of the senators and the president would completely change to something else, or other people, which is a really interesting concept, particularly because there's always going to be new ideas, there's always going to be new blood, but there is also the consequence of everybody has the same amount of idea of what's going on, and there is no sort of senior members who can sort of keep everything in order as the junior members figure out what the hell they're doing.
I think we definitely need to have a staggering effect. Because for senators, it's what, 6-year terms and no term limit? I would say maybe 3 terms at the most for senators.
I would say 2 terms.
2?
And then maybe 5 terms for representatives.
How long are the terms for representatives?
2 years.
Okay, yeah. I think that'd be fine.
Like 10 years for representatives, 12 years for senators.
And because you could still technically be a career politician. You could be a representative for 10 years and then a congressman for 12 years, and who knows, maybe even get president after the fact. But there should be limits on that. That should be a very rare occurrence.
Yeah, almost every single major player in Delaware politics has served in 3 major positions. I cannot tell you the last time we had a governor or senator who had not been a senator or a governor before then.
Yeah. I think that's jumping from positions, I think, is okay. I don't know if we necessarily need a limit on that, as long as there are limits on everything else, on the actual positions themselves. Because we shouldn't have, a senator who is the senator of that state for 30, 40, 50 years. That's not okay. That's not okay.
One thing we haven't talked about that I do think is worth mentioning is North Korea.
Oh, yeah.
Because under all intents and purposes, North Korea is a monarchy. I mean, even though the North Korean Constitution, or however they derive power, does not say, oh, power is passed from one family member to another, I mean, the general assumption is power is going to stay within this family. And
Don't they technically like call themselves a democracy and quote unquote vote, and they just have the
Yeah.
same guy win every single time?
I
Because,
don't I don't know if they do that for the supreme leader, but they do that for most. I mean, most communist countries do that for most positions.
Yeah, they vote quote unquote.
Yeah. Well, and I mean some. I mean, I think most communist systems, particularly electoral systems, are entirely undemocratic and corrupt. But at least some countries have the mechanism of if like you can either choose to vote for the person or not vote for the person, and if the majority of people choose not to vote for the person, then they'll just pick a new candidate to put before the people.
Mm-hmm.
And at least that has like
An
gleanings
illusion of
yeah, but
yeah,
I mean it really isn't a choice.
yeah. But North Korea doesn't even try to pretend. They're just
Yeah.
like, no, this is who you get.
But we treat it like it's something different. We treat it like it's just I mean what most people would call North Korea is just a dictatorship, and that's just it. When I mean it is a monarchy.
Yeah.
It's that's why it's called the Hermit Kingdom.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. Yeah. Do we have any closing thoughts on royalty, Seth? I think we've covered most of our bases.
Yeah, I understand why monarchy and royalty has been so popular throughout history, and I do not think we've seen the end of it at all. I'm sure it will continue to persist in our society, whether through a legal definition of royalty or just sort of unofficial royalty. As long as there are people, royalty will persist. But I am glad that we live in an age of enlightenment in which we can contemplate this idea of royalty, and we can question and fight back against this royalty.
Yeah, because I mean,
which is not something that people have always had the opportunity to do.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, think about during, pre-Revolutionary War America. This podcast, I mean, not the podcast were a thing back then, but this would be treachery. This would be, we would get hanged for saying the things we're saying. Like, we would be killed.
We would still get thrown in prison in Thailand for saying this.
Yeah, it's the fact that we do have the freedom to, because we're not saying anything new here. No. This is a relatively common concept of conversation, but 200-300 years ago, we would get killed for this. Like, we would be killed if someone heard us saying these things, and that is growth. Like you said, we're not going to get rid of royalty anytime soon, if ever, but at least we can talk about it and have some criticism about it now, which is an improvement. Only took us several thousand years to get to this point, but that's something. I am staunchly anti-royalty. I don't like the concept. I don't like nepotism and like this inheritance of power. I have major problems with. I wish our media would get over its obsession with royalty. Just go talk about the common person, man. Common people are cool. There's some interesting stories out there. You don't have to make every lead character in a movie like, oh, they're a long lost prince and they just never realized it. Fuck that. Make them become a leader in their own right through charisma and their own skills. Anti-royalty through and through.
I am also anti-royalty. Although I will give the disclaimer that, I mean, I will always catch myself every once in a while without even realizing it, falling into the trap of admiring royalty or thinking that, or giving something more importance or legitimacy just because of that royal ideal. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that's just sort of human association, but it is definitely, it's problematic, and it's something that I am strongly anti.
Yeah, I think that's our first double anti.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Wow,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, look at us.
It's a
first.
first.
I wasn't even expecting this to be an anti subject. I didn't even think about what my position
Yeah, I
was.
didn't even think about what we would actually say about this topic, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's our first double anti, Seth. Look at us. Well done.
Suck
Well
it, Queen.
done. Oh God. We will never be royals, and I'm okay with that.
Roll Tide.
So, I'll roll tide to that.
All right.
Batman?
Batman.
It's simple, Seth. We talk about the Batman.
The Batman.
Yeah, the Batman. It's simple. We discuss the Batman. That was a terrible Heath Ledger impression. I'm so sorry. Heath Ledger just turned over in his grave.
What if the Batman was within us the whole time?
You merely adopted the Bane voice. I was born with it. Jesus. And that's when everyone who was left to this podcast turned it off.
You know, they were like, you know what, this is good commentary on royalty.
On
and power
royalty. Like,
structures.
I wonder what
Oh dear God. Oh no.
what intelligent, insightful things are they going to say about my favorite character, Batman? Oh, yes.
We just do the entire section in the Bane voice.
So I've always been a fan of Batman. We gotta stop.
Okay.
That's awful. Thank God I don't have to edit these anymore. I don't want to hear that.
Sorry, Nikki.
That's what we have an editor for.
Batman. I want to start off just by saying I am a huge DC fan. I know this is a controversial opinion, and I will not say that DC is objectively better than Marvel, but in my own head, in my own opinion, just Marvel will never come close to DC for me.
See, I've never really looked at it as like Marvel versus DC. Like that's how everybody is always like,
Yeah.
they're always one or the other. For me, it's very much individual characters.
Yeah, I can
Like-
see that.
Like Spider-Man is my all-time favorite superhero. But like, I think that's kind of my thing is DC characters. A lot of the heroes always felt a little more shallow to me, like especially like Superman and like, I don't know, they just never really did much for me. I always liked kind of the depth of Spider-Man, and like, because he always went through shit and had to deal with it. And Batman is closer to that than a lot of other DC protagonists.
Yeah.
He is still a millionaire playboy, but he does go through shit.
I think since DC was the original mold of the modern superhero, because of the time period in which a lot of these heroes were formulated, particularly Superman and Batman as a mold from which they would jump off with Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, so on and so forth. They were developed at a time when they were meant to be sort of two-dimensional stand-ins for the dark brooding character or the Mary Sue, and obviously both of those characters have been given a lot of evolution, a lot of depth, a lot of growth, and a lot of change throughout that time. But I mean, at the end of the day, that is who they are. They are the dark brooding guy in the back of our subconscious, and the Mary Sue who can never fail and will always save the day.
Well, Wonder Woman actually does have more depth than people give her credit for.
Well, I mean, I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. That is my favorite superhero. I used to be obsessed with comics, and there is so much more to it than people realize. And I think that's true for a lot of these characters. It just it takes delving into.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is DC kind of had a bad habit of, like, because a lot of these, like, I know, like, the creator of Wonder Woman kind of did his own thing, and it was very staunchly feminist thing, and then DC kind of took it and was like, let's chill on some of that stuff. This is not the Wonder Woman episode. I would love to talk about Wonder Woman later.
Yes.
Please do check out, though, the film Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. It's a very good movie. It's very underrated. Please check it out. It's wonderful. But Batman, Batman is like, he is like kind of the, other than maybe Spider-Man, his origin story is the most well known. He is kind of the birth of the modern origin story. With, you know, and that's the thing, every iteration of Batman, it's always, they never fuck with the origin story. Mm-hmm. It's always the same. His parents got shot in an alley, and he was like, I don't like that, and then became Batman.
Well, and because it's so well known and it's so straightforward, that is why Batman is by far the most prolific superhero series, in particularly in movies. I mean, I cannot think of any superhero whose just sheer amount of movies comes close. And part of that is because of series, part of that is just remakes upon remakes upon remakes. But we keep coming back to this story.
There's been so many different versions.
It is always still compelling.
Yeah. It's very interesting, because, like, he strikes an interesting balance of, like, he is, like, you know, a multi-millionaire, and that's something that most of us can't relate to, but he also is one of the only prevalent DC, but really superheroes, that doesn't have a power.
Yeah. He
doesn't have a superpower. He's just really fucking smart and has enough money to back up his intelligence.
Yeah.
And, like, he does, like, you know, he has I remember there was, like, a
Iron Man ripoff. That's clearly a joke, because Batman came first.
Gross.
But
like, Batman's just, he's both very relatable and not, and it's an interesting blend. Like, but it's still better than Superman, who, like, who the fuck says, like, yes, the most relatable superhero, Superman. I know I can shoot lasers out of my eyes. I do that every Tuesday.
Well, I mean, it's not like all of us are smart enough to build an entire tech empire like Bruce Wayne.
True, but everyone thinks they could. I just don't feel like it.
Yes.
See,
exactly.
That's kind of what it comes down to, is people's own narcissism. And I'm the same way, of like, I could do that if I wanted to. I don't, but I could. You know, like, you can, like, pretend you're as good as Batman, but there is no fantasy with Superman, because he's an alien that shoots lasers out of his eyes. You can't fantasize about me. Like, you can, but, like, not genuinely. There's no realism there at all. But with Batman, you can be like, I could study some textbooks, build some shit, and get some money and fight crime. Like, I mean, hell, that's a prevalent thing in The Dark Knight. There's imposters of Batman who, like, they dress up as him and, like, I can fight crime too, and they all suck. But, like, that's kind of the same mindset in the fictional universe of, they're like, oh, I can do that.
Well, and I mean, I'm never going to rule out the possibility that some rich billionaire is gonna die and leave me the resources to become my own Batman. Whereas chances are I'm probably not going to be visited by some magic thing that will imbue me with powers.
You're not going to get a magic
neither of the
ring.
things I described were any of these superheroes' origin stories, but like I'm thinking from like a how would this happen to me sort of perspective.
That's the thing, is like people like fantasies that they are clearly never going to happen, but theoretically could. And that's, I think that's why people like Batman so much, is like he does have the dark tragic backstory and he is super well off, but like not to a degree that like no one could ever be this.
Yeah.
It is more realistic than most superheroes. I mean, hell, even Spider-Man, like, he gets bit by a radioactive spider, and, like, that's still more realistic than Superman, but, like, still not realistic.
And, I mean, Batman, without a doubt, has the most impressive rogues gallery. Like, all of his villains are so iconic and so famous.
Even the goofy ones, like Calendar Man and Condiment King.
Well, and I would even argue that like a good number of those villains are not necessarily super unrealistic either. I mean, the Joker, Bane, Ra's al... Well, I mean, not the magical parts of Ra's al Ghul, but like the secret underground society
Ninjas.
Elements. I mean, a lot of these villains that we see are people that actually do exist, just not to as absurd of a degree.
Yeah, Riddler's just a guy who likes riddles.
Yeah.
Like, he dresses in green and makes puzzles for Batman. Like, he's just a Rubik's Cube of a man. But yeah, like, I know I keep bringing up Spider-Man, but he's really the only comparable rogues gallery too. Yeah. And even then, like, I mean, Batman's is just in sheer quantity probably beats him, but those are the only two with like just a huge rogues gallery that people know several of the villains for. Like Superman, you got Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
And Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor. And then Bizarro Superman.
Lex Luthor.
Oh shit, I forgot Lex Luthor. Jesse Eisenberg. But yeah, like, I mean, most heroes have a big villain. And
I mean, Joker even got his own movie last year.
Have you seen Joker?
I have not. I need to, though.
I really like it. Mm-hmm. I know it was very controversial.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it needed to be controversial, but I really liked it. Honestly, Joker is one of my favorite Batman-related films.
Mm-hmm.
Joker and The Dark Knight are the best Batman films.
Oh yeah. Well, and I love just the level of. I mean, I would say the Dark Knight trilogy was sort of the spawn point for the modern resurgence in superheroes that we're seeing today.
Oh, absolutely.
It was the thing that made superheroes mainstream, which opened the door for the Marvel Cinematic Universe only a few years later.
Oh, 100%, because that's the thing, is comic book movies were seen as a joke.
Yeah.
Like, the only ones that really were kind of taken seriously-ish were Sam Raimi's Spider-Man first two of his trilogy.
Yeah.
But then they're still very goofy comic book cheese.
Well, and
then all the other ones are rough.
Were any of the Dark Knight movies, were any of them nominated for Academy Awards?
So, The Dark Knight, I think it got nominated in a couple of tech categories, but it actually sparked a really big, like, controversy that it wasn't nominated for Best Picture.
Because those are, I mean, they were obviously blockbusters, but those were truly, like, artistic films.
Oh, yeah, Dark Knight especially. And that was the thing, is like Dark Knight and Wall-E both came out that year, but neither of those movies got nominated for Best Picture, and everyone was like, excuse you? And that's actually why, because before, up to that point, the Academy only nominated up to 5 movies for Best Picture, and there was such a huge controversy about, like, The Dark Knight and Wall-E were, like, the best movies this year, and you didn't nominate either of them? The fuck? So the Academy upped it to 5 to 10 films can be nominated for Best Picture. So, like,
I despise the Academy. I despise award shows. I think they're all corrupt and stupid. But we could get into that conversation at some other point.
Yeah.
But it's just remarkable how, superhero movies and blockbusters of that like are not treated as works of art, even though ones that are absolutely on the same par as most other movies nominated for the Oscars.
Yeah.
They're just thrown to the wayside.
Well, the Academy does, like, the Academy is incredibly flawed. I like the general premise of the Academy. There is definitely issues with it. Again, we'll get into that later. But, there are biases in certain genres that just never get nominated. Horror, comedy, and superhero films are 3 of the biggest ones that are snubbed constantly. But Black Panther, I believe, was the first superhero film to get nominated for Best Picture.
I think so. And only because there was such public outrage trying to get it in.
Yeah. And, like, because the thing is, like, there are, like, other than Black Panther, I don't know if there's any MCU movies that I would say should have been nominated for Best Picture, but, like, Logan.
Maybe Winter Soldier.
Maybe Winter Soldier. Maybe.
I wouldn't say one way or the other, though.
And, Logan.
Yes.
Joker didn't get nominated for Best Picture, did it? I don't remember.
Maybe.
I honestly don't remember. I think it should have. It was definitely the top 10 movies of last year. But, I honestly don't remember. But Logan, both Deadpool movies, they were never going to get nominated, but they're incredible films.
Yeah.
There's another big one I'm missing. But regardless, Dark Knight.
Superman versus Batman.
God, what a train wreck of a film. I saw that in theaters.
I still have not seen it. I don't. One of these days I'll get around to it.
No, don't bother.
Yeah. Well, see, my problem is one of my passion projects is one day I hope to work on a DC extended universe, and I have one already mapped out in my head how I would do it. And I was pretty excited when they were trying to do that. And then I saw Man of Steel and was like, this will not be my extended universe.
I will say the one kind of cool thing that has come out of their DC universe just bombing is that as like kind of a scrambling to salvage things is now they're like, all right, cool. Like some will be tied in together, some won't. Some will be just kind of alternate universe kind of stuff like Joker. And like that weirdly kind of fits for DC because they have so many different universes and stuff in the comics themselves. So like in a weird way, that's kind of the way they need to go. Yeah. And I hope they keep doing that where like, sure, some of them are tied together, some of them are just their own thing. Like, you have, we have like 3 different canon Jokers now. Like, like
the concept of the multiverse is so integral to the DC comics and the DC universe that even if they do keep on making remakes of everything every few years, it 100% still fits into the canon.
Yeah, like I think they've accidentally stumbled across the right way to do it by just scrambling like, oh shit, no one likes these movies. Well,
and it allows DC a lot of wiggle room. We've had what, 10 different remakes of Batman, of 10 different actors, 10 different universes. I mean, at this point, it's essentially, it's like James Bond.
Yeah,
I mean,
in a lot of ways.
but Marvel, I don't know. I mean, we've just seen the new trailer for a new Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, and people will go and see it just because it's a Batman movie. It doesn't have to be linked to any sort of bigger storyline. I cannot say that Marvel will have that same effect if they ever make a remake of Iron Man or Captain America in like 20 years. If people will flock to it the same way they will with the MCU. The only exception would be Spider-Man.
Yeah, for sure. Because that's the thing is, like Iron Man especially, and like Captain America too, honestly.
Iron Man was not... I mean, maybe
not
I'm wrong, but he was nothing before the MCU.
He was known, but he was a solid B-lister. He was like, people like comic readers knew him. And like he was kind of known in like the mainstream nerd culture, but like he was very much a secondary character at best.
Yeah.
And Iron Man, the film really blew up, and that's the thing is, people really associate, like Iron Man is Robert Downey Jr. right now.
Yeah.
And like maybe they'll grow out of that eventually, and like they'll be able to make different versions of it. But because the Marvel Cinematic Universe is so linked to, all the films are linked together, and all the actors are these characters, they don't have the luxury that DC now has of, oh, there's been 2 or 3 different Supermen, there's been 1,000 Batman, there's been 5 different Jokers. Like DC has a lot of wiggle room now of they can just let various directors come in and do their own art passion project takes on characters, and they'll do well, as shown with Joker.
Yeah.
Joker has no direct connection with the DCU, and it did incredibly well. I think it was the first R-rated film to break $1 billion in the box office.
Something like that, yeah.
It did incredibly well. And they have so much wiggle room now because they stumbled across, very accidentally, the kind of perfect formula for them of they can kind of do whatever the fuck they want now.
Yeah.
Because of their fuck-ups. Like,
that's an interesting way of looking at it.
I mean, the thing is, it's kind of true. It's
it is 100% true. I agree.
Like, and like the thing, like, you know, and there's the animated DC stuff it's its own thing. There's the video game DC stuff. There's like the Harley Quinn show is its own thing, which is an amazing show, by the way. Highly recommend it. And he plays get HBO Max. It's surprisingly a really good streaming service. B, watch Harley Quinn. It's a surprisingly amazing show. But like that's its own take. They've really weirdly done a good job of adapting the universal style of the comics with their media, because there's just so many different versions of the same characters and same properties. And it works, honestly. It works.
And I mean, being a huge DC fan, I am extremely grateful for that.
Yeah. Someday you'll get a proper Green Lantern film set.
One of these days. God. Well, and the problem with Green Lantern is the best format for a Green Lantern adaptation would be a TV show. But there is no way that a TV show would have the budget, or that people would be willing to put in the budget at this point in time to do a Green Lantern show justice.
I mean, your best bet would probably be animated.
Yes.
To get a proper telling of it.
Now, Green Lantern, I obviously in shows that, or in comic books, there's this recurring tradition of kind of swapping out characters whenever you sort of want to change up a franchise or give a new spin to it. I mean, Green Lantern, I think it works incredibly well, because Green Lantern is not a person, it's a position that is, I mean, the entire point of the entire concept of Green Lantern is that it's a there are a bunch of different people who serve as Green Lantern. And so every couple of years when there is a new Green Lantern, that's a really exciting thing. Now, for other positions like Batman, I mean,
Batman is Bruce Wayne.
It is Bruce Wayne. They have tried switching it out so many different times, and I mean, sometimes you have an adaptation where like Dick Grayson is a really cool Batman, but you cannot replace Batman, Bruce Wayne as Batman.
Yeah, like even Spider-Man has done a good job with Miles Morales of kind of taking the mantle. Like he's still only kind of now heading the mainstream, but like that's transitioned really smoothly. But like you said, every time they try to like, this is Batman now, people are like, I don't know about that. Like there's a billion Robins,
which is interesting because Batman has that built-in second character who hypothetically would slip right in, and has on numerous occasions. I think it's also interesting to mention just how much the Batman series is the mold for so many superheroes to follow. I mean, Batman had the first major arch nemesis, the Joker, who appeared in the very first Batman comics, not Detective Comics, which Batman was in earlier. I mean, Robin was in the first Batman comic. And
I didn't actually know that.
I only just learned that recently. And, I mean, in our heads, that duo is so iconic. The superhero and his sidekick, Batman and Robin.
Yeah. Robin is... It's interesting because everyone jokes on Robin. But he's also incredibly well-known in his own right. Like, I mean, hell, Teen Titans, there is no Batman. I think he's in like
Titans
one episode.
And Young Justice, Robin is the leader, and he's a badass.
Yeah. Young Justice is so good.
Yeah. Agreed.
But yeah, Batman. Circling back to the Rogue Gallery, who is your favorite Batman villain? Because he has so many to choose from.
Yeah, that's tough.
Like Joker's good and all, and like he's had the most adaptations, but I know personally, I've always had a soft spot for Riddler.
Okay.
Riddler's really fun. Killer Croc's fucking scary. Like I know you don't do video games, but in the Arkham Asylum games, which are amazing, one of the best video game adaptations of a superhero property, he's fucking scary in the Arkham Asylum games. He'll fuck your shit up.
This is
Calendar Man, Condiment King, Kite Man.
This is probably a really unpopular opinion, but I really liked the version of Bane in Dark Knight Rises. I don't necessarily think it worked out well how the movie ended, but for the majority of the movie, I think the concept of him as this revolutionary who's just going around in the shadows gathering support and fucking shit up, I thought he was very compelling.
Well, I think that's why people ended up not liking him, because he was so good for 80% of the film. And then, I'm not going to say the actual twist, but there was a twist that kind of reduced his power. And I think that's why people ended up not liking Bane, was because he was super cool. He was super, like, empathetic and charismatic as a villain. And then they just kind of pulled the rug out from under you.
Well,
and
that's
it's like,
something that upset me so much about the third Iron Man movie. Iron Man 3 is my favorite Iron Man, but the Mandarin is this super steeped in lore character. He is essentially he is essentially Batman's nemesis. I mean, not Batman. Iron Man's nemesis. But I mean, in the end, the Mandarin wasn't even real. The Mandarin was just this concept and this made-up character. And it completely took the air out of it.
Yeah, it's a... I understand wanting like a big plot twist and stuff, but you still have to toe the line of when like you're just doing it just for the sake of a plot twist.
Yeah.
And like that's very much what it was in The Dark Knight Rises, and I think that's what kind of, because up to that point I think people liked The Dark Knight Rises. I think that was the really big complaint with it, was the plot twist.
Agreed.
Like I don't even necessarily mind the plot twist. It's just a matter of like you had such a good villain, you didn't really need to put in another layer.
And this is very controversial. I actually prefer Dark Knight Rises to The Dark Knight.
Ooh.
I know. That's a very
you lost me.
Hard,
you lost me.
hard take to. But I mean, I agree. The twist is not executed well. But I just find myself always so engaged with it. I think the storytelling, the world building is incredible and beautiful in it. Yeah.
I mean, the first like 2/3 are really good.
Yeah.
Then the ending is kind of wacky. Even outside of the twist, the ending feels weirdly paced, and it's just I didn't really vibe with the last third. But like the first 2/3 are really good. But like The Dark Knight as a whole is just, it's still probably the best superhero movie, with like the like holy trinity of superhero films is like The Dark Knight, Logan, and I would say Joker are probably like my three favorites, with the Deadpools coming in as a very close honorable mention. I mean, two of those three are related to Batman.
Yeah.
And that's incredible how prolific he is, because Batman is not my favorite hero. As I believe I said, Spider-Man is, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And even like on the DC side, I guess he'd be my favorite like main hero, but like as far as other characters go, Beast Boy from the Teen Titans show was always a favorite of mine. Raven, Harley Quinn and her whole gang of people in the show are amazing. Like a lot of Batman's side characters are more interesting than Batman.
Yeah. I mean,
but I think
you have Commissioner Gordon, you have Joker, you have Catwoman, you have
Poison
Robin.
Ivy. Poison Ivy's a great character.
Oh yeah.
Clayface, Killer Shark, Man Bat. His rogue gallery
Two-Face,
again is just
Mr.
Two-Face. Yeah, like you can go on forever with like how many well-known characters, like even not diving deep into his weird backlog.
Yeah.
He just the prominent villains that people know. Did we say Penguin? Penguin?
Oh yeah. Jeez.
Fucking, like it's amazing how hugely prolific just his side characters are. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Batgirl. Like God, it's baffling how, like, what other of any media has that many super prevalent in our pop culture side characters?
I would say Batman has to be one of the largest media franchises of all time. Just in all forms of media.
The only other things I can think of, like maybe James Bond.
I would say, I mean, obviously Star Wars is bigger. Maybe a couple.
Star Trek is pretty big.
Yeah, Star Trek.
Like,
maybe
if it has Star in the name, it has a good shot.
I mean, but Star Trek, and Star Trek has a lot of spin-off material too. But I mean, I would say Batman has been going on longer than any of those things, and occurring in multiple forms of media than any of those things. The only reason why I would say Star Wars is more than that is because Star Wars is just monstrous in its size and reach.
Yeah, it is a media empire in its own right. Like, there's a reason Disney bought that property for, I think, $1 billion or so. It was a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And they got Lucasfilms along with it, but they bought Star Wars. That's what they wanted, and that's what they got. But yeah, Batman's been in pretty much every form of media. It's had comics, it's had video games, it's had movies, shows, and all of them have been, like, obviously it's had things that were not well received, like, Suicide Squad. But in all of those formats, it has at least one thing that people are like, yeah, that's fucking great. There's the Arkham games, there's several different animated shows that are great. There's, the Dark Knight trilogy. There's...
We cannot talk about Batman without talking about the Batman and Robin show.
With Adam West?
With Adam West.
Yeah. See, I didn't watch a lot of Adam West's Batman. Like, I've only seen mostly clips and, like, a couple episodes here and there. Like, I know, like, there's, like, shark propellants.
I watched a bunch of episodes when I was a kid. But it's been a while.
It's so interesting how drastically different Batman's tone has been over the years.
Yeah.
Because you have the incredibly goofy Adam West version, and then you have, dark, broody Christian Bale Batman. You've shit like Joker. Like, I mean, it's such a broad spectrum of tone.
Joker is insane, too, because the sheer range of portrayals on Joker is mind-blowing. On one, Joker is just a wacky guy trying to, like, steal the world's biggest ball of rubber bands. And then the next, he's, like, causing genocide and bringing about the New World Order.
Oh, yeah. To have a villain that is just as all over the place in a good way as the protagonist is a testament to the writing of all of it. Like, I mean, and there's been so many super famous portrayals of the Joker. Yeah. Heath Ledger, most recently Joaquin Phoenix, Mark Hamill's voice acting version of the Joker is considered one of the best voice acting performances of all time. It's like there's been so many different versions, and it's, again, most of them except Jared Leto are good.
I didn't actually mind. I actually didn't mind the Jared Leto version. I felt like I genuinely felt like it could have worked if it was given a different vehicle through which to be shown. Obviously, Suicide Squad was not that vehicle.
Well, okay, it's a combination of, like, he had like 5 minutes of screen time. B, Jared Leto was an asshole to all of his castmates.
Okay, that's fair.
He's like, oh, I'm method acting. Look, I'm putting used condoms in your trailers and dead horse heads or whatever the fuck it was. Like, no, stop. Like, Joaquin Phoenix is an actual method actor, and he didn't do that shit. Like, but yeah, he's just, and like the fuck, what was it, broken on his forehead or whatever the fuck?
Yeah.
Like,
damaged.
Damn it! Oh, I'm sorry. Damaged.
Just like you, Philip.
You made me this way. You're my origin story.
You're welcome.
I can't believe you pushed me into a vat of acid, Seth.
I do crazy things for love.
I do anything for love.
Like push you in a vat.
Yeah. Vat me, baby. I don't know what that means, but I said it.
Something I learned just today while I was doing a little bit of reading for this episode was and maybe this is just an urban legend, but it seemed to be coming from a pretty reputable source, of the Adam West Batman series. The idea came from a Batman and Robin party at the Playboy Mansion, where Hugh Hefner threw a party where everyone was dressed up as Batman and Robin, and they had to, like, act like they had to use the campy catchphrases that were used in the comics at the time.
Holy guacamole!
And one of the guests, being a TV either executive or some sort of person in TV, was there and like ran straight to his producer and was like, "Okay, so I've got this idea."
Did you know that Adam West got kicked out of an orgy because he like came dressed up as Batman?
I did not know that.
Yeah. He was like,
you
"Yeah, I
could
got
have just
kicked out of an
made
orgy."
that up, and I'd believe it.
I've heard that. I haven't fact checked it, but I've heard that.
Even better if he came as Catman.
Better yet, Kite Man.
Oh, God.
Hell yeah! Watch Harley Quinn. It's so fucking good.
Okay, maybe one day.
Get HBO Max, my dude.
Dude, I have so many shows to watch before I get around. I still need to finish Black Sails.
God, you haven't. Oh, hurry up so we can talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, Batman is just. Lego Batman is also quite good.
Yeah.
Have you seen Lego Batman?
I have not.
It's good.
Batman is probably the franchise that I think Lego has done. Well, no, I would say there's a number of other franchises that Lego's done a lot of really cool things with. But just the Lego Batman brand is so big, and they've done so much with it and done so many cool things with it. You gotta give them credit for that.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And I can't wait for a Lego episode. There's God, and
I
Lego Batman
can't wait
games are good.
for us to be made as Lego figures.
Oh, dude, Lego Brute Neighbors.
Our studio is gonna be one of their builds.
Yeah, the Brute Neighbors studio, Philip and Seth's bedrooms.
It's actually
it's two separate sets.
Yeah, it's actually just gonna be the two of them with laptops.
Hey, someday we'll have an actual studio, Seth. I'm telling you, that abandoned Wendy's is gonna be real nice, real good acoustics.
Everybody knows that Wendy's has the best acoustics of all fast food places.
It's true, 100%.
It's a
That's
science
why.
fact.
Yeah, it's scientifically proven. God, we could talk about Batman for eternity.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's any other big things I want to touch on before we wrap it up. I do want to go and say I am hyped for the new Batman with Robert Pattinson.
I think it's gonna be good.
He's a good actor. People
Yeah.
were like, when he was first announced, they were like, "Oh, the Twilight guy." He's been in some really good stuff. Like The Lighthouse is an amazing movie.
You mean the Harry Potter and Goblet of Fire guy?
He was Cedric Diggory, and Cedric was one of my favorites.
He was cool.
Yeah. Spoiler for Harry Potter. R.I.P. Cedric, my boy. R.I.P. Never forget.
Never forget.
We don't have Harry Potter on the list, do we?
It will be on the list.
Okay. We should for sure have Harry Potter on the list. But yeah, I'm very hyped for the new Batman. The trailer looks really good. I think Robert Pattinson will be a very good Batman.
Agreed.
Definitely better than Ben Affleck. I didn't necessarily hate Ben Affleck's version. I just don't think he got a chance to shine. And then there was just so much shit with their go at the DCU.
Yeah.
That it was a mess. Like Aquaman and Wonder Woman were like the only even decent DC universe movies.
Yeah.
So at least they're starting to get their shit together. Yeah, very hyped for Robert Pattinson. He's a very good actor. Lighthouse, good time, great movies. Please check him out.
I loved Aquaman. We should talk about Aquaman. Look, I'm not gonna say that Aquaman is like a great movie, but I just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it wasn't like some super thought-provoking, inspirational piece. Yeah,
it's just supposed to be a fun romp, which it was.
And it had really cool like sea monster effects, and I love me some sea monsters.
I think that was the best that an Aquaman movie could have been.
Probably, yeah. And Jason Momoa definitely. I'm glad we got past orange jumpsuit Aquaman finally.
Yeah.
It's like you know what? We're gonna break the mold. We're gonna have him just be super fucking ripped.
Yeah.
Jason Momoa is cool.
Oh yeah.
He could crush my head with one hand, probably.
I thought you were going to say he could crush your head with both thighs, but
I mean that probably too. He could do both at the same time. But yeah. Any closing thoughts on Batman? Did you ever give me a favorite villain?
Just Bane.
Okay. Bane is great in the Harley Quinn show.
Good.
He's very funny. He's my favorite character. He's hilarious.
I'm sure there probably is somebody, but I can't think of it right now. I do.
What about Balloon Man?
Oh, but I forgot about Balloon Man.
He's
I
a real
don't know,
character.
because I mean, Joker is just so complex and so dynamic that I mean it would be so easy to say Joker and like give valid reasons why.
Have you read The Killing Joke?
I have not. I need to.
It's quite good. It's one of the few Batman comics that I've actually read because I'm not a huge like comic reader. It's really good. There's a reason it's considered one of the best comics. It's very, very good, and it's very dark,
is that
as you'd expect. But
the what was the movie adaptation that Mark Hamill was
The Killing Joke.
Killing Joke.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't seen the adaptation. I've heard it's okay.
Yeah.
But like the comic is amazing. I'm sure you can find it online somewhere.
Probably.
But yeah, Batman is
Batman.
great. Yeah, same. I'm also pro Batman. He's one of my favorite DC characters, or at least protagonists for sure, or heroes. Yeah, good stuff all around. I think I'm not. He's one also like everyone rightfully complains about remakes and reboots, myself included. He's one of the few that I don't ever get mad about a new Batman. I'm like, all right, we'll see who the next take is. He really is like Bond, like you said, like just like a new take on the character, and I think that's really cool. So, pro Batman.
All right. Mystery topic.
All right, so I just showed Seth Yakko's World from Animaniacs, a little clip from the original Animaniacs show. I want to show this to Seth because the new Animaniacs reboot is coming out very, very soon. Honestly, it might be... No, I don't think it'll quite be out by the time this episode comes out, but it'll be right around that time. And am a huge fan of the Animaniacs. I actually didn't get into them until just a few years ago, but I love the show. It's very quirky and fun. This clip especially is just... It's a fun little Yakko just naming all the countries, but he's Yakko, and he's having a goofball time of it. So, what did you think, Seth? How familiar are you with the Animaniacs?
Well, I am only sort of vaguely familiar through pop culture. I know there's a new series coming out, and I watched a little bit of like Pinky and the Brain when I was a kid because they had their own series. But I've never watched an episode of the Animaniacs. I don't really know anything about the Animaniacs other than being able to recognize the characters. I thought the clip that you showed me in particular was interesting because I've seen it before, and like I've seen it referenced a good deal in pop culture. I will say that's a terrible map.
Most maps are terrible if you think about it.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the borders, like, they didn't even try with, like, what was it, Yugoslavia and Switzerland, and that whole section was just one big country. And I mean, they would have they would have countries of the same color right next to each other. And I'm like, that completely goes against all rules of map making. Like,
God,
there's actually been
map nerd.
a science determined that you only need 4 colors on a map. And, like, that's all you need. You can very easily take those 4 colors and make sure that no country of the same colors ever next to each other. And whoever made this map clearly just like
didn't care about
something
map science.
And also all the stuff
nerd.
he names like isn't even just countries. Like he starts naming just different islands. He starts naming regions of the world for no sort of apparent reason.
Well, I mean, this did come out in the 90s. Were some of these just different names for those things at the time?
Some of them were, but not what I'm referring to. Not all of them. Like, at one point, he points to the Caribbean Sea at one point, to the sea, and then never points to a body of water again. It seemed very. This is just the didact in me. I mean, this was fun.
This is unfactual. This cartoon. I mean, I just kind of like that. I didn't really think when I was a little, because I didn't really get into Animaniacs till recently, but I did see this clip when I was a kid, and it was just a fun little way of seeing kind of just how broad the world is. When you're a little kid, you don't really think about just how many fucking countries there are, but there's a lot, and he just rapid fires through them. And it still takes 2 minutes, even with him just going full pace. That's the entire clip, is him just naming countries. There's no other joke there. It's just Yakko naming countries.
I want to know why was Manchuria separate from China? I understand him naming Tibet separate from China because Tibet has controversial autonomy, or at least it used to. But Manchuria was a Japanese puppet state that got reabsorbed after World War II. Why in the 90s is it still on the map?
Especially because they even specifically made a point to say Germany now all in one piece. So this is very much a
yes
90s map. I don't know, Seth. I'm not a map nerd, but I don't have the answers you seek. But
you failed me.
I know. I'm so sorry.
What can you explain to me the concept of the Animaniacs?
Yeah, sure. It's the Animaniacs themselves are Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, the Animaniac brothers, or excuse me, the Warner brothers and the Warner sister. And
is this sponsored by WB?
I mean, it's a very WB heavy episode with Batman and Animaniacs now. Yeah, because they own both of those. I wish I'll take some Warner money, but it's just these three crazy Animaniacs goofing around, causing trouble, being a nuisance, and being funny along the way. There's all sorts of wacky shenanigans they get into. There's one episode. I don't think it was the Animaniacs, but they have lots of side characters, and there was one side character that got into it with Roger Ebert, the film critic. There's the Pinky and the Brain. There's all sorts of little. It's basically it's an animated sketch show. What are they
supposed to be?
There's a name for them. I think it's they're a made up creature. They're their own creature. They're not an actual Bugs Bunny. They call themselves something. They might just be called Animaniacs or Warners, but they're their own thing.
Okay.
I gotta freshen up on my Animaniacs lore for the new series, but
how well versed are you in the mythos of Animaniacs?
I used to be very well versed. It's been a minute since I've watched any Animaniacs, but I love it. I know my favorite sketches were always the Animaniacs themselves, Pinky and the Brain. And a lot of their other sketches were kind of hit or miss. They had these two hippos. They were probably my least favorite sketch. They were boring. I forget her name, but the squirrel character, she had kind of hit or miss ones. There was Buttons the dog and the stupid little baby. They were fine. Oh, and there was these the Good Feathers, who their whole gimmick was they were pigeons, and their whole gimmick was basically spoofing old 60s movies. That was the entire gimmick of that series of sketches in it. And it's an interesting premise because it was a sketch show. It was an animated sketch show. And that's pretty cool, you know? Like, I mean, you have like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny cartoons, but like other than those, like you don't really see a lot of that. So it's fun to like see this just collection of shorts in a show format, and they were really fun. Like some of them were hit or miss, but like you're gonna have that with any kind of sketch variety show.
Yeah.
And it's just good fun. And you had like kind of educational stuff like the country song, and there's a state song. I think there's a country and capitals song too. I think they have the capitals.
I think I have
as
seen,
well.
or at least I've heard of that one before.
And like they have fun little music numbers, and it's a fun show. And I'm actually really hyped for the reboot. I think the reboot, the trailer looks really fun and in the spirit.
I did watch the trailer, and I thought it looked very fun.
Yeah, and it's
I mean, you know, with sort of the resurgence and reboots that we're having, those sort of reboots are always interesting to watch, because I mean, particularly with animated stuff, with more kids oriented stuff, it's done very well. It is done to bring about some sort of continuity and finality to the original content.
Yeah. And usually with this kind of thing, like, usually they're making it because they want to make it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, Animaniacs has a lot of fans, but I don't know if there was, like, a huge amount of people saying, like, give us Animaniacs or give us death. Like,
yeah. I mean,
like,
I was definitely surprised when I heard that they were remaking it.
Yeah, like, I was happily surprised. I'm like, oh, I could see that working, but I never was like, give me Animaniacs. Because, like, they already have such a huge backlog of things. Like, I don't even think I watched the entire show in its entirety, because it went on for forever and had so many different episodes. But, like, they brought back most of the original voice cast, I believe. Spielberg himself is producing it again. And like it seems like they just wanted to make it, and like because it's only it's a short season. There's only a few episodes in it that they're bringing back, so it's just a short little thing. Like maybe they'll make more, and maybe they won't, but they wanted to make it, and I think that even shows in the trailer that like it seems to have the same spirit, the same jovialness, the same wackiness, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I'm really hyped for it. And I check out the original series too if you can find it anywhere. The Animaniacs are great fun, and they're one of my favorite.
How many seasons did it have?
A good bit. I think it only had like somewhere between 4 and 6 seasons, but each season had a fuck ton of episodes. It was one of those kind of deals. And it's just great stuff. And like and it always had an edge too, because like there's one of my favorite clips from Animaniacs is they're like detectives or something, and they're like trying to like find the culprit of something, and Yakko's like oh, search for fingerprints, and Dot pulls up Prince the singer, and Yakko goes no fingerprints, and Dot goes I don't think so, and throws him away. That's a fucking adult joke.
It was that era of cartoons where, like, it was past the point where cartoons were would not have any sort of risque material like that. But it was before the risque material was, like, tempered down and made more sort of...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had an edge to it, and like that's the same thing as like Looney Tunes, and hell, even the original Mickey Mouse cartoons had an edge that people forget about. I mean, Donald was a Nazi in one short. It was all a dream and it was a nightmare. He didn't want to be a Nazi, so it's okay.
Sure, whatever. We all know where Donald's allegiances lie.
But yeah, like Animaniacs always had an edge, and I think it looks, at least based on the trailer, I think it's gonna have that. I'm sure it'll be tempered a little bit. But like it was always really good about having that kind of edge to its humor, and I think that's a big part of the appeal. And I'm glad that it at least I can't say till I've seen the reboot, but it seems like they're going to keep that. And that is good because that's a big part of the soul of the show, is it did have that edge. And I like cartoons that do that. I don't like it when cartoons baby their audience. Like, oh, it's for kids. They don't need all that. Like, no, get a little risque. Be a little edgy. Make them think about things. Make them ask questions. Like, that's your job as a parent, is to answer your kids' questions. So, like, yeah, there's probably going to be some, like, what was that? What does that joke mean? Like, talk to your kiddo. Be like, that's what that means, kiddo. But maybe not the Prince joke, but...
Well, no, Philip. Kids need answers. You know what? One day I'm gonna show my kid that clip, and when they ask, "What's that mean?" I'm gonna be like, "Call your Uncle Philip. He'll explain it to you."
Oh, you're gonna call me Uncle Philip?
Don't fuck it up before then.
Fair play. Oh God, I'm gonna be Uncle Phil.
Uncle Phil.
I hate when people call me Phil. There's only a couple people I'll like let it slide with. Don't you do it, Seth. I see that look in your eye.
I'm gonna have my kids call you Uncle 1L.
Wow.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah.
It is spelled with 2 L's and you never forget that.
It is 1L. Philip.
No, that is inaccurate, yes. And you are a liar and a heathen, and I want the world to know that.
Otherwise, it's like Phil Lip. Like
yeah, Philip.
Phil's lip. What,
yeah.
What, do you have herpes or something? Like, why are you drawing so much attention to your lip?
The majority of the adult population, if you've kissed more than 4 people in your life, you have herpes.
I've kissed you, Philip.
You might have herpes.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
I'm pro Animaniacs. They're really fun. They're one of my favorite cartoons. It's a good time. I'm definitely going to check out the reboot. Very pro, 100% pro Animaniacs.
I abstain from giving any opinion about the Animaniacs because I purely don't have any anything to say. I am pro kids learning more about geography and being introduced to the complexities and beauty of the greater world. That being said, I'm anti that video because maps.
Because maps. You fucking nerd.
And I will stand by that. Maps are great. I love maps.
I know you do, Seth. I know you do. I really love maps.
That, by the way, is a reference to a long overnight car ride Philip and I took together, where one very sleep-deprived moment, I needed to express my sheer adoration for maps.
God. You and your fun. I really love maps. And me and our friend Blake, all 3 of us were on this car trip together. Me and Blake just kind of look at each other and just bust out laughing. Oh, God.
I will never be ashamed. You can't change me, Philip. I am who I am. Love me for me.
God, I've tried to change. I love you, Seth. You nap-obsessed weirdo. I love you.
Well, that's all the time we had. This has been the Brute Neighbors podcast. I'm so glad to have spent this time with you.
We gotta find next week's topic, right?
Oh. After we find next week's topic.
You fool! You're doing what I did a few episodes ago.
By the way, be sure to check out our Twitter page, follow us, engage with us. We love to see audience interaction.
Yeah, comments. Oh, also, something I've been meaning to say for a while. If you have a suggestion for something you want to see us talk about, comment it or tweet it at us.
Yeah.
Well, at least look at it and like see if it's something that we think we can discuss. Like 100%, please. We're very much open to suggestions. My world is collapsing. All right, Seth, our first topic of discussion next week is going to be urban legends.
Okay.
We just added that to the list.
Yeah. That's
But-
interesting.
I think that'll be fun.
It will be. I think we'll have a good amount of discussion for it.
Yeah, like there's some fun ones out there. I'm excited to talk about that one, honestly.
Yeah.
And our second topic of discussion is Seth, vamp for me. I said vamp, not drum roll, you fool.
Oh. I don't know what vamp means.
Like, make stuff up. BS. Say some stuff to buy time.
Oh.
That's what vamp means.
Well, I was taking a walk through the park the other day, and I was looking at all the trees that have been turning red, and I've noticed that the leaves on the south side of the trees are turning red faster than the leaves on the north side.
Cool, that's enough of that, Seth. All right, so next week's topic is going to be John Carpenter's The Thing.
Huh, okay.
That's a favorite of mine, and you have not seen it before, correct, Seth?
No, you might have to show it to me while I'm...
Oh, yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, you're here next week, so we should, if we have time. Like, I own it, and I mean, it's under 2 hours, so it's a relatively short watch. I'd be down to show it to you.
Yeet.
It's a personal favorite of mine. It is a sci-fi horror, but it's not super crazy, I don't think. I think you'll be fine.
Okay.
So yeah, tune in for that. That's a favorite of mine. And then it'll be Seth's turn for the mystery topic.
I already know what I'm gonna do, and I'm
now.
forget
remember
it
it.
before next week.
Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you. Please tell your friends, like and subscribe, all that stuff. We're really trying to expand the channel, and any support you're willing to give, we 100% appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. Anything to say, Seth?
Check out Full Lumberjack if it's out.
Hopefully, maybe.
We'll see.
If not, then people just be like, what the fuck's Full Lumberjack?
Even better, keep them on their toes. Ooh.
It's like, oh, that sounds fancy. I like me a good full lumberjack.
I like my lumberjacks full.
Not half. Full.
Roll Tide.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Good night.
You always say goodnight.
You might be listening to this during the night. I don't know. Have a good life.
Have a good life. Bye. I'm ending the recording.